Oh, welcome back, folks. Sheepdog Smokey here, and this one's going to bounce around a little bit from topic to topic because there's really just a couple of things I didn't talk about in my other videos today. But the first one, apparently there were smugglers posing as construction crew trying to sneak Mexicans and other illegals across the southern border that got in a shootout that led to one border agent being injured. Another one is, once again, playing on race. And another one is just bull, in my mind. Before we get started, as always, remember to subscribe so that you're part of the channel and part of the giveaway at 500, 1,000, and 1,500 subscribers. That said, let's go on and dive right in. The first one is not surprising. We've had smugglers trying to get illegals across our borders for decades, many of them successful, as the millions of illegals in this country prove. There's been little to no response or work to curb this or find and deport those here illegally because Democrats need their votes. We know that New Jersey legalized motor voter, even though they've been on the front lines of saying minorities won't be able to get an ID when we talk about voter ID, and the lines were blocks long for illegals to go get their driver's license when they legalized that very recently. California has allowed illegals to get driver's licenses for some time, and they have motor voter as well. Of course, they pander and lie, saying, well, this is just for local elections in the communities they live in because they deserve a voice. But they're registered as U.S. voters, even though they're not citizens. Now, before anyone says that's racist, point to the one single race that is here is 100% of illegal aliens. You will fail because there have been Europeans, there have been Russians, there have been Africans, there have been Asians, there have been Hispanics, there have been literally every race on the planet has had someone found to be here illegally, whether they come in legally and stay too long or they come in illegally. It doesn't matter. The law stating you must come in by our rules is not racist. But that's a little beside the point. Right now, especially because, this was posted very recently, we have Mexico saying that their border is closed. They will not allow American citizens into their country due to COVID-19. But they still have people flooding across the border into our country. And at this point, I say that we need to at least step up a minimal amount. Maybe send some Texas Rangers or other DPS people or National Guard to the border. Governor Abbott has been working very hard to curb this, but he's only one man. And when people come into Arizona or New Mexico or California and then move around, they still show up in Texas. It is moronic for the Democrats to say it's all about race. It's not. That's the only card they have. Just like the idiot Ocasio-Cortez saying that schools are paid for by illegals. No, they're not. They're paid for by people like me, my parents, my neighbors, my cousins, who own homes and pay property taxes. I know a lot of people who don't have kids in public school. In fact, I'm one of them. My parents are two of them. My aunt and cousin next door to them are two of them. I know several people in my area that pay property taxes, either on the home they're buying or own or via their rent, who don't have kids in public schools. And we all pay our property taxes, and that funds public schools. But Democrats don't like that because it proves that we don't need illegal aliens here. Of course, they prove their own racism when they say things like, who's going to clean your hotel rooms? I worked for a 4-star hotel for a number of years. And while, yes, I will admit, our house cleaning crew or housekeeping crew had a lot of people of Hispanic heritage. We had people of other races as well. And I know for a fact, because I went through the hiring process with them, all of us had to prove we were in the country legally and allowed to work legally. When you do something like that, well, you just don't want brown people voting. Wrong. 26th Amendment says that U.S. citizen aged 18 years or older may vote in U.S. elections. It's very clear. I would dare Ocasio-Cortez to introduce an amendment to the Constitution in the House stating that anyone, regardless of citizenship, may vote. Just to watch her breakdown when it fails would be rather entertaining, I'll admit. But it appears that she is at least smart enough to know doing that would be the end of her career. Moving on in the liberal race baiting, it is once again making news that they're saying it is racist when it comes to the coronavirus, that minorities typically live in very densely populated urban areas where the virus is more prevalent. That's not because of their race. Honestly, it's not. If you look at Chicago, Seattle, Portland, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, these densely populated urban areas. Look at my state, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin. Property is very expensive there. Rents are very high. It was that way years and years ago. When I graduated high school, I wanted to go, at the time, to the University of Texas at Austin. And I thought I didn't want to live on campus. I wanted to get an apartment. Quickly gave up that. I decided college wasn't for me, and I wanted to go into, web design and photography, things along that line. Had I done it, I'd probably be working with some group like possibly Corridor Digital. And I looked at moving to Los Angeles, and I looked at salaries, and I looked at property, and I realized I wouldn't be able to eat for months without taking up massive loans, or sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 other people. You look at the more conservative areas. Look at, not Atlanta, that's a blue hotspot, but look at somewhere like Kennesaw, Georgia. Look at more conservative areas like, Waco, Texas, College Station, Texas. You look at upstate New York, Rochester, where even they will tell you, don't look at New York City to see who the New Yorkers are when it comes to the state. There's a lot of red in upstate New York. You look at places like Oklahoma City and surrounding areas, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, that get out of the city into the suburbs. Property values go down as you get away from blue concentrations. For crying out loud, my parents lived in far north Fort Worth for many years and now live far away from that, and their expenses went down. Fort Worth is conservative. When we moved away from Fort Worth, it's less expensive to live. It's just the way things work. If you move to suburbs or rural areas, yes, I'll understand. You can't get an acre with a nice house on it for less than the price of a decent house on an 1/8 acre lot in the city. But that's because you're getting a nice house on a good amount of land. I've looked at houses in my area. Houses. The median house price in my city is about $95,000 to $115,000. That's low, people. That is very low. Apartments, sadly, are kind of ruled by the industry. But there's not really a lack of any industry that I know of. You could live where I live and work in aerospace, work in IT, education, medicine, law enforcement, firefighting, taxi driver, restaurant, movie theater. There's no shortage of industries to look at when you live in the suburbs. Yeah, you might need a little bit more fuel efficient vehicle because you may be driving 30 miles one way instead of 5, or being able to walk. I'd happily move out of New York City to move 30 miles away and drop the cost of living a little bit. I'd happily move out of Dallas or Los Angeles or Chicago or Seattle or Portland and drive 30, 40 miles in an economical car. And I assume a lot of people think the same. Unfortunately, the people who have now built up their lives in these urban swelling areas are kind of trapped. They've been in their job long enough, they can't really afford to leave and find another one. Their kids are in school. They're tied to their community. They don't want to leave. But that's not because of race. That's because of simple economics. But again, Democrats don't like when you bring in logic and truth and facts. They're all about their own personal truth, and their own personal truth is they always say they're right and they always say everyone else is wrong. The last one is a pet peeve of mine when it comes to topics, and that is the topic of evolution. And it's not a pet peeve because of the topic itself, it's because of how it's always framed and how it's always discussed. As I said, my pet peeve is with how it's approached and pretty much where the discussion always goes. For this, I am not discussing abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is the theory that life just happened. That is what I refer to as evolution as it pertains to the origins of life on this planet. I use that because I'm not always talking to people who will know the term abiogenesis. Abiogenesis. If you are asymptomatic, you have no symptoms. If it is abiogenesis or abiogenesis, it is genesis or a beginning without a biological connection. Basically, no creation or no evolution from any other species or any organism. Literally, it just happened. And Richard Dawkins is famous for supporting this. Basically, something just caused the universe to spring into being, and that a planet, ours, was the right distance from the sun, and a puddle of goo was in the right place at the right time with the exact right amounts of the exact right elements that combined in the exact right order and timing to create life. In my mind, that devalues life to the point where it's less valuable than this. But this is basically evolution as it pertains to species advancing. The latest one to get on my nerves is what they call the stoned ape theory. Now, as of yet, I do not know that the missing link has been found. We know that certain species share a lot of markers with others. Humans are designated as very, very close to other primates. We know that gorillas and chimpanzees and other monkey species can walk on two legs, they have opposable thumbs, they can learn sign language, and they do have social order, and so on. But we've not found a missing link to say that humans came from apes. So in my mind, that is two very similar species that are not related. For crying out loud, we share a lot of the same DNA with some plants. Okay, it doesn't mean that we evolved from plants. But this stoned ape theory basically says that from Homo habilis to Homo erectus to Homo sapien, it was psychedelics. Basically, the Homo erectus was eating magic mushrooms, and that just unlocked his mind, and it spawned evolution into Homo sapien, thinking man. I find that insulting. Okay? We know that prior to Homo sapiens, tools were being used. We have cave paintings from long before Homo sapien was on this planet. If it was these psychedelics that spurred the intelligence to begin, why do we find tools and other things that point to certain levels of intelligence from prior to Homo sapien? I have never discounted that species do evolve based on their environment. If you look at human history, we've not always been the way we are today. Average height right now for men is, I believe, around 5'9" to 5'11". I'm a little above that, 6'1". Average height for women anywhere, I believe, 5'3" to 5'7", maybe 5'3" to 5'6". If you go back far enough, you'll find that average height was a little bit lower than that. You will find that in certain climate periods, the run-up to the Ice Age and after the Ice Age with the Great Thaw, when temperatures were still lower on average than they are today, humans would tend to be hairier, stockier. They would have different physiques, and that allowed them to survive in these environments. If you look at humans who live in very hot, arid climates, they're typically leaner, no body hair, and they survive and they flourish in these arid, hot climates. When we look at other species, it was inevitably an either very timid or very hungry, or both, young wolf that braved going up to a human, and the human was kind to it. And that began to form a link between the two. As more humans began to take canines into their groups, these canines began to be less aggressive. They were friendlier toward human. They would help them hunt. They would protect, because in turn they were fed and they were cared for. Wolves, if you've ever seen one, are massive. You need to only look up Annika's channel. I don't know her last name, but she is amazing. Animal Watch, I believe. Simply look up Annika. I believe it's Annaka. I don't know. But just search Annika Wolves. She is a British young lady, blonde hair. You'll see her in almost all of the thumbnails. She's amazing with animals, but she will introduce you to actual wolves. They are massive. It was a trait of evolution that the canines that were either very hungry and thus not able to be aggressive, or very timid by nature, that befriended man, they didn't need their size. They didn't need their aggression. They would not breed with the larger wolves, and over time, the domesticated canine began to be smaller and smaller, to where now we have teacup chihuahuas all the way up to Great Danes. And certainly now the variety of dogs and the variety of cats is due to selective breeding. People will crossbreed their Labrador and a poodle to get the Labradoodle, and so on and so forth. And that is not in my mind evolution, but the wolves gradually becoming smaller, more timid, and more emotionally linked to humans. The humans didn't do anything other than befriend a dog, a wild canine, a wild wolf. And that wolf, over time, began to be a totally different branch of the species of Canis. I don't discount that happens, because your environment changes. If we suddenly found ourselves in an environment where we had no electricity, and thus we had no ability to go to the grocery store and buy food, you were now foraging and growing, your diet would change drastically. Imagine living in an environment where you are now having to cut down trees for fire and to build. You're growing root vegetables and such, and you're not eating the way you had been, and you're working much more. Your body's going to change. A few generations of that, and the average human will be different than the average human now. It is a trait of life that we can adapt to our environment. But we don't adapt to our environment by becoming a different species. We don't go from amoeba to tadpole to fish to some kind of crawling beast to dinosaurs to birds to chimpanzees to lions to tigers to sloths and panda bears, and then ultimately, poof, humans. Doesn't happen. Humans do change. We do know that, just at the beginning of the species of human, we were vastly less intelligent than we are. We did not walk erect. We did not use the tools we use today. And it took a long time to get where we are. But we didn't just appear because all of a sudden a monkey became Homo habilis. I just don't see that. But this theory is, like I said, just insulting, because it basically says that, well, monkeys were just eating random things and boom, now they're human and they can think. No. If anything, eating just random wild things that are psychedelic, those are not going to give you flashes of massive intelligence that stays with you. It's not how a chemical compound works. Dr. Pepper, caffeinated drink. Caffeine is a diuretic, and it also is a stimulant. People who drink coffee will tell you that as soon as they start drinking coffee, they do get a little bit more energy because of the stimulant factor of caffeine. They do, if they drink coffee instead of water all day long, they do go to the restroom more. But eventually, if you have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, the stimulant wears off. You didn't drink some magic water that was made from crushed up beans that all of a sudden just gave you massive energy all the time. Talk to people who take mushrooms and other psychedelics. They can see sound for a while, but ultimately they come back down. They feel horrible. They're lethargic. They're not out creating art and tools and society. I just don't understand how theories like this get started and then gain so much traction that they are defended so vehemently that saying, so you're saying a monkey took some drugs and became human, and you get attacked and called names for it. You know, if we have archaeologists and biologists and chemists and other people like that, and they're looking at it, and they manage to find the species of primate and the exact chemical compound of the mushroom or other plant eaten. And they can say, well, this one is an oddity because this would alter DNA, because they're going to extract the chemical and they're going to introduce it safely to DNA that is not still inside of a living creature. They're going to say, well, this restructured the DNA. This didn't just act like a drug. I'll listen to them because they will have conducted experiments on it. This is someone, however, who just says, I know what happened. Monkeys ate some magic mushrooms. It's not how it works. I worked as a jailer for about a year. I watched people crashing off of drugs. A lot of different ones. They didn't still have any of the effects after about a day, other than wanting another fix. You know, the people who were on meth, they were no longer energetic. The people who were on psychedelics, they were no longer seeing and hearing things that weren't there. After a few months, which normally involved medical treatment to bring them down safely and to wean them and to get them rehabilitated so they didn't need the drugs anymore. Not only did they not want them, but they were showing absolutely no signs that that chemical had ever been ingested, other than telling you they were a recovering addict. I don't know. If someone knows of a biologist or a chemist or a paleontologist or an archaeologist who can say, well, we can point to this species of primate and this species of mushroom, which is vastly different from any other psychedelic mushroom, and it is possible that it restructured DNA a bit and maybe spawned a different member of the primate family being ultimately evolved, I might listen to him. I'm also going to say I might zone out. But that isn't someone who has studied it not to the point of I'm going to prove evolution, but they studied biology or chemistry or history in a manner that I haven't studied as much. The article I've read does not, the articles I've read on this, do not present it in that way. They present it more as some closeted academic that has either come up with or found a theory that they just absolutely love. And that's really the bone of contention I have with stories like that. They have very little behind them other than an academic basically ranting at the world, believe me, dang it, believe me. And I'll force myself to suffer through the article to see if they ever change that tone, and so far I've not found any that do. I don't know. I've ranted long enough on this. I've jumped all over the place on topics. I'm tired. I have work in several hours. I'm going to finish my Dr. Pepper, watch a couple of videos, and go to bed. As always, please remember to like and share the video so that we can expand the conversation and grow the channel. Please remember also to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you can be part of the channel and ready for the 500, 1,000, and 1,500 subscriber giveaway. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, stay healthy, stay home if you can, and have a wonderful day.